Francisco Goya was a prolific artist who lived from 1746 to 1828. He was born and raised in Spain and spent the majority of his life expressing himself through his infamous works of art. He specialized in Romanticism and went through many different phases throughout his artistic career. So in 1799, he was appointed as the first court painter at the Madrid court. He painted several beautiful portraits for the king and queen between 1799 and 1801. These portraits were very elaborate and beautiful and featured bright and cheerful pastel colors, which melted together to create the classic romantic portrait. This same sort of style translated to his paintings outside of those presented in the royal paintings. His early paintings, such as A Walk in Andalusia, made in 1777, featured dreamy colors and beautiful depictions of a sunset along with people resting along their camping site. Other paintings, such as The Fall, which was created in 1787, are similar and feature a beautiful nature-filled scene with mountains and a bright blue sky and trees and forestry. However, Goya's paintings did not stay this innocent and cheerful for long. At some point or another, a distinct change can be observed in Goya's painting style. His art went from cheerful and bright, filled with dreamy colors, to filled with dreary, fearful scenes of death and witches and the occult. So when going through the timeline of Goya's paintings, I asked myself, what happened? How could someone make a complete 180 in their art style, and why might this occur? When looking deeper into this, I found out some very interesting things, which I'm excited to share with all of you. So one of the first things I looked into was the surroundings of Goya during the time his paintings started to take a darker turn. The earliest signs of this change were the paintings he created in regards to the Spanish Inquisition, which was happening at the time, and the Peninsular War, which were both very big events that had immense effects on society. So during this time period, Napoleon ordered his troops to overtake Spain, and it ended in disaster. During this time, Goya's society was experiencing immense struggles, death, loss, famine, and sadness surrounded him, and this reflected in his art that he created. During this time period, he went on to create a whole series of 82 etchings from 1810 to 1820. These 82 etchings were called the disasters of war. These etchings often depicted violence and a lot of dead bodies. It captured the decimation of the Spanish people and the fear that his society had to deal with at the time. From this point on, there is a steep change in both Goya's life and his art. In 1792, Goya started to suffer with his mental and physical health. He began to suffer with severe headaches, dizziness, hearing loss, and problems with his sight. And as a result of this, he actually became deaf. This drastic change in his health led Goya to go into somewhat of a downturn spiral. He actually moved into his own secluded farmhouse, which was actually nicknamed the Deaf Man's House, since the tenant before him was deaf as well. And from here, his art style was no longer as bright and dreamy as it was in the beginning of his art career. It really started to show with one of his paintings that he titled The Yard of Lunatics, which was created in 1794. This was about 2 years after his hearing loss. This painting depicts the yard of an insane asylum where mentally ill people can be seen in a panic. They're wrestling each other, and others are silently sitting in corners. The whole painting gives an eerie vibe that the people in it are not content with where they are and are definitely not of sound mind. This painting was actually based on a scene Goya saw growing up. One day, he walked past an insane asylum in the city of Zaragoza. He was seemingly repulsed by the way that the mentally ill were treated. They were barely regarded as human and were abused and were treated as though they were the scum of the earth. Now, if you can only imagine, in the 1960s, people who were brought to insane asylums were treated horribly. So try to imagine, people trying to navigate this time in the 1780s. This impacted Goya so much that it inspired him to therefore paint the scene of the institution he witnessed. And deep down, when he noticed that his health was declining, his own mental health and his own physical health was deteriorating, he was very afraid of being regarded as insane himself. He did not want society to view him as a mad person because he had seen firsthand how they were treated in society during this time. He had seen man's inhumanity towards humanity. This realization, mixed with the mental illness he continued to experience later in his life, was a recipe for disaster for Goya, and that really reflected in his art and art style. His art only grew to become more and more dark, really a reflection of his internal challenges mixed with his frustration surrounding society's beliefs. Around this time is when he painted one of the most recognized paintings, Witch's Sabbath, in 1798, which detailed a large goat-like creature hovering over several witches. He also painted Witch's Flight, which detailed several women appearing to be witches flying over a man. These paintings of the occult and spooky subject matter were Goya's direct rebelling of his heavy beliefs in witchcraft and evil that society held at the time. He did not directly believe in these things, but he did see how in society the church were trying to use them to, fear-monger people into kind of staying in this straight line and following the church's ideals. Goya used this as an opportunity to make a statement, and therefore this subject matter was a frequent occurrence in his art. So kind of to wrap it up, in conclusion, while looking into the works of Goya, many things come into play. The condition of society during the Spanish Inquisition, his own mental health and physical health, along with societal beliefs and norms at the time, were all determining factors in how his art changed throughout the years from something that was very light and happy and somewhat dreamy to, art that kind of was scary and depicted scenes of the occult and other traditionally evil things. So I hope you guys